Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the United States Constitution. So in order to talk about that, we need to understand what the Constitution is. Okay, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It is the final say. It has everything in it that we are supposed to follow as U.S. citizens. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the 7 principles of the U.S. Constitution. Number 1, popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty means the people have the power in the government. Okay? When our founders were creating a new framework for the United States, we had just come off a battle with Britain and a king who was very controlling and gave the people little to no power. So the first thing that the framers wanted to establish was a government ruled by the people. And we know this because we, the people of the United States, is the start of the U.S. Constitution. It's the start of the preamble. And it was very important to the framers that they made it known from the get-go that the people were the ones in charge of the government, not one person, not one branch of government. Okay, principle 2 is republicanism. Republicanism is the people exercise their power by voting. So we needed to establish a way for the people to have the power, because even back then it was very difficult for someone to get to the Capitol, and it would be nearly impossible now for all the people in the United States to have unlimited power. So what they did was they established a way for everyone to have a say, and they did that through voting. So now you can go to the polls. You should go to the polls when you turn 18, and you will vote for representatives. You will vote for something as local as your city and something as large as the President of the United States. You're voting for representatives to go for you and represent your feelings and views. Okay, the third principle is federalism. This is the power in the government is divided between the federal and state governments. Okay, so the Constitution has set up a way for our national or federal government to have some powers, and our state government to have some powers. That way, the states don't become too powerful like they did under the Articles of Confederation, and the federal government doesn't become all powerful like the colonists had experienced under the King of England. The best way that I can illustrate federalism is by drawing a balancing scale, which is what you use in science to balance weights. So on a balancing scale, you want the federal and the state government to be equal. You don't want the federal government way up here while the state is way down here, or vice versa. Principle 4, separation of powers. Each branch has certain jobs. No one branch has all the powers. Okay, so the first Constitution that we have in the United States after the American Revolution were the Articles of Confederation. And under the Articles of Confederation, we established only one branch, the legislative branch. It did not work out the way we had hoped. We were trying to keep the government from becoming too powerful, and in doing that, we made them completely weak, and the states had all the power, and it just didn't work out. So when we came back to the Constitutional Convention to try and come up with a framework that would work for us, giving the federal government some powers, but not taking powers away from the state, we decided to establish 3 branches of government, which are the executive, judicial, and legislative. Executive, legislative, and judicial. We gave each branch certain powers that the other did not have. And for example, the legislative branch is in charge of making the laws. The executive branch is in charge of enforcing the laws. And the judicial branch is in charge of interpreting the laws. Each has a certain power, so one branch does not become all-powerful. And going along with that is the next principle, checks and balances. Each branch can exercise checks or controls over the other branches. And the best way I've found to illustrate that is with an equilateral triangle. As you know in your math class, when you talked about an equilateral triangle, all three sides are equal, and no matter which way you turn the triangle, it's going to be balanced. And so that's kind of the idea behind checks and balances. No matter which branch you're looking at, they have certain powers, but they're not all powerful. For example, the executive branch will be the branch that chooses the judges for the Supreme Court. But the legislative branch has to vote and approve those, so they're checking each other. The legislative branch will create a law, but then it has to go to the executive branch, the president, and he has to approve it or he can veto it. While the judicial branch then will look at laws and decide whether they follow or fit within the constitutional guidelines. If not, then they're ruled unconstitutional. Okay, the sixth principle is limited government. This simply means that everyone must obey the laws. And since I'm not an artist, the best way for me to illustrate that was with a no sign. You see those, no smoking, no diving, that type of thing. But everyone from the top, the president, to your grandma, have to follow the same laws. That keeps anyone from becoming a tyrant like King George had become when the American colonies were under British control. Okay, the seventh principle is individual rights. These are our personal liberties and privileges. And I illustrated that by drawing the Bill of Rights, which is what we're going to talk about next. So there are two types of rights. There are unalienable rights, which are rights you're born with and no one should be denied. Example, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then there are individual rights that all people within the United States are promised by our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, created to protect our individual rights. An amendment simply means a change. So the first 10 amendments we're familiar with, we're going to get more familiar with, but for example, Amendment 1, freedom of speech, press, petition, protest, and religion, that's all guaranteed to you under the First Amendment.